Welcome back to another explainer. Look, if you're staring out at your garden right now, already dreading those dreary, barren winter months that are just around the corner, I have got some incredibly good news for you. Today, we are going to talk about completely transforming that barren winter landscape into a vibrant, colorful oasis, and our absolute secret weapon for this, the autumn blooming pansy.
I want to hook you right out of the gate with this question. What flower can survive 25-degree freezes, that is -4 degrees Celsius, folks, and literally blooms straight through the snow? You know, most of us think of annuals as these fragile, delicate little things that just wither at the very first sign of frost. But the pansy, it is definitely not your average flower. It possesses this incredible physiological aptitude to the cold, making it a rugged, hardcore survivor that can deliver bright, cheerful faces right in the dead of winter.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1. Meet the autumn pansy.
First things first, we really need to understand that pansies aren't just regular annuals. They are what botanists call facultative biennials. Basically, unlike your summer favorites, say petunias or marigolds that just shut down and give up when things get chilly, pansies actively initiate floral buds when the temperatures drop down to between 45 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Plus, their compact, low-growing habit naturally minimizes wind exposure, and their dense foliage actually acts like a blanket to insulate the crown tissue. They are biologically hardwired to thrive in the cold.
Now, you might be totally used to buying your pansies in the spring, but planting them in the fall gives you some absolutely massive benefits. The whole game here is root establishment. When you plant in the fall, the roots have the critical time they need to expand and stabilize before the soil temperature drops below 45 degrees. And why does that matter? Because 45 degrees is when root function essentially shuts down. If you get them established early, they're going to reward you with continuous winter color in milder climates. We're talking zones 7 through 10. And in the spring, they just absolutely explode. In fact, field trials have shown that fall-planted pansies produce over 3 times the cumulative flower volume of those planted in the spring. As an added bonus, they offer a vital late-season nectar source for foraging pollinators when pretty much nothing else is blooming.
Moving right along to Section 2, Mastering the Planting Timeline. To get this right, we're going to use the backward counting method. It's like a giant puzzle. Day 0 is your specific area's average first fall frost date. From that date, you literally count backward 4 to 6 weeks. That is your golden target window to transplant them outdoors. Now, if you're starting from seed, you've got to count back 10 to 12 weeks from that frost date to start them indoors. This precision is absolutely crucial. If you start too early, the late summer heat is going to cause irreversible bud suppression and the plants will just stretch out and get leggy. Start too late, and the roots won't have time to establish before the ground freezes solid. And this brilliantly illustrates how that timeline shifts dramatically depending on where you actually live. Always check the USDA hardiness zone map for your zip code. If you're up in the colder zones 4 or 5, you're actually starting seeds indoors in late June and transplanting by late August. But if you're down south in the warmer zones 8 through 10, you can actually hold off on transplanting until October or maybe even November. You really have to wait until those soil temperatures drop below 70 degrees.
All right, Section 3, Prepping the Perfect Soil. So the crucial point here, the thing you absolutely need to remember, is this exact number, 5.4 to 5.8. That is the ideal pH range for pansy soil. Notice it's slightly acidic. Planting outside of this specific narrow pH range is actually one of the leading causes of pansy failure, especially for us home gardeners.
And here is the fascinating science behind why that pH is so critical. If your soil pH rises above 5.8, the soil chemistry literally changes and it locks up micronutrients like iron and boron. This means the plant starves to death even if those nutrients are technically sitting right there in the dirt. Even worse, high pH creates the perfect cozy environment for a devastating disease called black root rot, or Thelaviopsis basicula. This is exactly why you should never ever just blindly add lime to your flower beds out of habit. Always, always test your soil first.
Let's get our hands dirty. Section 4, Step-by-Step Planting Guide.
Now, if you are starting from seed, there are a few genuinely counterintuitive rules you must follow. First off, use a fine, aerated seed starting mix. Do not use a heavy potting soil. Second, and this trips up a ton of beginners, sow them just 1/8 of an inch deep, but you have to cover the tray entirely. Pansy seeds require total darkness to germinate. No light allowed. Finally, keep that soil nice and cool, between 65 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If your setup gets above 75 degrees, germination drops off a cliff. Do all this right, and you'll see sprouts popping up in 10 to 14 days.
When it's finally time to transplant those little seedlings outdoors, please avoid these common beginner mistakes. The wrong way to plant is burying the crown too deep. This invites botrytis rot, and it can kill the plant super fast. The right way is to plant it at the exact same depth it was at in its nursery container. Another huge mistake, overhead watering. Wetting the foliage, especially late in the day, is a fast track to fungal leaf spots. You always want to water at the base of the plant, so the roots get a good drink while the leaves stay perfectly dry.
Moving into Section 5, Care and Troubleshooting.
For your long-term maintenance, make sure you space your plants 6 to 10 inches apart to allow for good airflow. When it comes to feeding them, you want a balanced fertilizer applied at 150 ppm nitrogen. But listen up, here is a major pro tip. Completely avoid fertilizers with high amounts of slow-release ammoniacal nitrogen. During the warm days of fall, high ammoniacal nitrogen will cause your pansies to grow these weak, succulent, stretched-out stems that are highly susceptible to winter freeze injury. Also, keep the soil uniformly moist but never soggy, and always deadhead your spent blooms so the plant directs its energy back into making beautiful new flowers instead of seed pods.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that you can actually diagnose your soil just by looking at the leaves. See the black spots on this lower leaf? That is a textbook visual sign of iron or manganese toxicity. It immediately tells you your soil pH has dropped way too low below 5.5 and has become overly acidic.
On the flip side, take a look at this leaf. Do you see how the veins themselves are green, but the space between them is turning a sickly yellow? That's called interveinal chlorosis. This is your plant telling you that your soil pH is too high, above 6.2, and it's completely blocking the roots from absorbing iron. If you spot this happening, don't panic. You can correct the issue by carefully applying a soil drench of iron sulfate or aluminum sulfate to pull the pH back down into that perfect 5.4 to 5.8 sweet spot.
Let's bring it all together in Section 6, Wrap-Up and Final Tips.
I want to share a quote from our sources today that I absolutely love. It says, "Their quiet reliability, blooming through drizzle, frost, and gray skies, is earned not by chance, but by attentive, evidence-informed care, a partner in seasonal rhythm." I mean, how incredibly beautiful is that? By using science-backed timing, properly prepping our soil, and paying close attention to their environment, we actually get to forge this beautiful partnership with nature that sustains us all winter long.
So I want to leave you with this question to ponder as we wrap up. Are you ready to confidently transform your barren winter garden into a resilient, colorful oasis? Because now you have the timelines, you know the soil secrets, and you know exactly how to avoid the common pitfalls. It is time to start those seeds and get your autumn garden planned out. Finally, just a quick reminder that the information provided in this explainer is for educational purposes only. Gardening outcomes may vary based on your individual circumstances, your local microclimates, and specific environmental conditions. Happy planting, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.